Hey there, let's talk about a low buy. So I did my very first low buy in 2025, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you all of my top lessons that I learned through the 12-month journey of being on a low buy, in the hopes that it will help you if you are planning on doing one in 2026, what hopefully lessons you can expect to learn along the way, and also how to help you be the most successful you can in setting up your own low buy. Hi, I'm Allison, and on this channel, I love to talk about conscious consumerism, share about my low buy journey, and talk about intentional living and living with more of the seasons and the cycles of the natural world. Recovering from burnout is a big priority of mine. And so I love to share and talk about all of those things here. So if any of those interest you, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. If you are interested in my top must-dos to set up yourself for a successful low buy, so be sure to watch that video next. I'll link it down below and up in the cards so that you can learn more about the systems and structures that you really need to put in place to have a successful low buy, especially if you're going to tackle one for a full year, because it's not for the faint of heart. I'm really excited to share with you my biggest lessons because I learned so much over the last 12 months about myself and my own behaviors and habits, and also just some really great wins that are keeping me motivated. So be sure to subscribe because I'm going to be sharing about my 2026 journey, and there will be a video coming out soon around all of like the budget and the rules that I'm putting in place for myself for 2026 to have hopefully another successful low buy year. One of my biggest lessons that I learned in 2025 is that what I measure teaches my brain that that actually matters to me. At the end of 2024, I dabbled with low buy. I was getting really interested in wanting to become more of a conscious consumer, curb my mindless shopping, and mostly just scrolling online. That was something that I knew was not supporting my burnout recovery. It was actually fueling more burnout. And so I wanted to start really putting some structures around myself with my low buy, but I didn't actually put a system in place to track it in 2024. And no surprise, I wasn't successful. I'd kind of had a vague understanding. I think we often think we spend less than we do. We're like, oh, well, like I just picked up a few things there or added a few things in my Amazon cart here. And you don't really see it unless you track it. So I set up a system for myself in 2025. I just use my notes app because for me, my low buy, and I have a video on all of the rules for my 2025 low buy. If you're looking for some inspiration, I will link that down below. But for me, I was just tracking my own personal spending. So my husband and I, we have a budget for our home, home expenses, groceries, travel, things like that. But this was for my own personal spending, on clothes and skincare and makeup. And my own personal spending is what I wanted to get a handle around, because that's where I found myself doing mindless searching, mindless scrolling, dreaming, thinking, building carts that I wasn't even going to buy. Like, I just needed to stop some of that, take some time away from being on a screen. I have a full-time job where I'm on a screen all day. And so when I started tracking it and tracking it in a really simple, easy way for me within a notes app, I didn't need a big old spreadsheet because, again, it was just a small $125 a month of personal spending on my low buy journey. So you got to create a system for yourself. And now I realize that in other habits that I want to change in my life, if I measure them, if I create a system for tracking them, it shows my brain this is what matters. We're putting attention here. Tracking how many books I read. That's something I love to do. Part of my lessening my time on my phone, lessening scrolling time, reading. And so tracking these habits of my low buy, of reading books, of other things, it's so helpful. So really encourage you, if you're setting up a low buy, set up a system that works for you. Google Sheets, Excel, Notes app, whatever it is, you've got to track it for yourself. You can't just loosey-goosey go about a low buy, because you just won't be successful, because a year is a long time and you're trying to change some habits that we have a full capitalistic structure in place to want us to bend these rules, right? Wants us to buy all the time. And so if you're going to be successful, you got to put some parameters around it, and tracking it was the number one thing that I did to help me be successful. My other lesson that was super helpful for me was to create a no buy list. So having a list of things that I just knew I wasn't buying in 2025, I put on there like, I'm not buying shoes, I'm not buying home decor that isn't thrifted or from a vintage shop. I made a video about it here in case you need some inspiration. But I highly suggest creating a list. This year, I'm not going to create such a robust one, but having that list of 25 things that I was just not buying, or some rules around like, I'm not buying any journals or planners until I've used all the ones that I currently have in my home. Unless there's no journals and planners and I have a need to want a new journal, then I can go buy one. So I had these rules in place for myself that really helped with the mind gymnastics that is a low buy. Because I love a low buy so much, because it's actually training us to like live within this capitalistic world, but as a conscious consumer, which is what I want. So for me, doing a no buy not only felt too restrictive, but it didn't actually feel like I was going to learn the habits that I wanted to be able to be successful long term. I know that I'm going to be a consumer in this world, in this economy for the rest of my life. But how do I do that in a way that's aligned with my values, that I'm not overspending, that I'm not giving in to every impulse that flashes across my screen when I'm on Instagram or YouTube or what have you? Having that list of just like, these are things I'm not shopping for was so helpful in the problem solving and the mental gymnastics of like, when I saw a pair of really cute sandals that I wanted for the summer and I felt like I needed and was just gonna go with so many outfits and I wanted it and my brain's like, come on. I was like, nope, because on my list, I'm not buying any shoes this year unless I needed like to replace a pair of gym shoes or hiking shoes. Those were my exceptions. So you can write all these rules for yourself of like, what are the exceptions? Just really helps the mental gymnastics and the decision-making fatigue that can really come with shopping. And as someone that's been recovering from burnout, that decision-making fatigue is something that I do not want to add to in my life. So really suggest making yourself a no-buy list. Like, what are the things during your low buy that you are not going to be buying this year? It just makes yourself more successful, especially if you're setting yourself a small budget like I did with only $125 a month. It's not a lot of money nowadays. It was very helpful in me being able to use my budget in a way that was aligned with my values, but also didn't just like disappear so quickly, and I didn't have as much decision-making fatigue on how I could use it. Another lesson, which was kind of interesting for me, is that I had a huge urge to declutter my house on a mass scale. I've always been the type of person that's loved to like declutter my closet, but I typically only like full sweep declutter my home if I'm moving. And because I've moved a lot throughout my 30s, now that I'm in my early 40s and we've lived in this house coming on to 3 years here in Joshua Tree, it's like I just had this urge to really go through room by room, drawer by drawer, like closet by closet, all the places that things like end up being holiday decor and kitchen gadgets and your bookshelf, things that typically I would not really declutter because it's like they have a place. I tend to keep a more minimal home in general. That's always been more of the tendency that I've leaned towards. So I typically would only ever declutter my closet throughout the year. As I was on a low buy, I wasn't expecting to want to declutter more. I was actually thinking my brain would feel like I'd want to hold on to all the things that I had because I couldn't just shop. But that wasn't actually the case. I think because I started to have more discernment about the things I was bringing into my home, because I was just thinking so much more critically about all of my purchases, it started to like infuse into my home where I'm like, do we really need that end table? Do I really still like that piece of art? So not just what I was buying, but also what I had. So that was a really cool lesson. I read a super helpful book called Soulful Simplicity. I will link that down below. That was really helpful in just like becoming more refined in the things that I wanted to declutter. I really loved that and was definitely not expecting that to happen with going on that low buy journey. With my low buy budget being only $125 a month, one of my rules was if I spent that $125, I was on a no buy for the rest of the month until the next month kicked in and I got another $125. Or if I didn't spend that whole $125, whatever I didn't spend would roll over into the next month. But again, $125 doesn't go that far these days. So I just thrifted a bunch in 2025. And again, it's always been something that I've done, but being in more of a mid-size plus size body, the thrift store is a very like hit or miss thing. So it's like you gotta go often to it to be able to find things that actually will fit and work on your body. I really loved that part of my low buy year is when we were on vacation, my husband and I would check out vintage shops and thrift shops, and that was really fun when you're in different areas to see the different types of articles of clothing and home decor and things that you can find in other places. So it was just a really fun part of my low buy journey. Another big lesson of mine was that some months are just going to be harder than others, and you can't give up. You just got to keep going after it, root back into the reason why you are doing your low buy. Make sure that you have that solid so that you can lean on that when you are having these harder months, when you just want to overspend, when you want to throw this thing out the window and you don't want to do this because it's too hard and who the heck cares and whatever, right? Like, you're rooting back to the reasons why. Is it because you're trying to save money for vacation, get out of debt, recover from burnout, stop mindlessly shopping? Whatever the reason is, having that why, and when you have your harder months, I knew that it was going to be hard, but I didn't really expect there to be harder months than other months. I just thought like it would be hard pretty much. I just was like, this low buy year, it's going to be a hard year. But some months were super easy. Some months I had like a ton of money roll over, and a ton by meaning like, $100. I would have only spent like $25. It was interesting to me that some months felt more challenging than others. When those months were challenging, I reminded myself of why I was doing this, and I didn't give up. Even when I made a mistake, which I made a whole story time on when I made a mistake with my low buy and how I kind of like fixed it and reshifted, but it's like I recommitted. I continued doing it. A year is a long journey. Just to not expect yourself to be perfect, but also don't let yourself off the hook when you fail, when you have a mistake, because that recommitment to doing this journey is really where you're gonna like build the muscle and see the success of committing to doing this journey. So that was a really great lesson for myself, is that like some months felt super easy breezy and other months felt really challenging, and either way I just like rolled through it and I didn't let myself off the hook when I made a big mistake, and I just like recommitted and got after it. And lastly, my biggest lesson is just like when you measure something, when you set systems in place to help you be successful, you can be successful in changing a big habit. And changing this habit for myself has really helped me in healing my burnout. That has been so beautiful, spending less time on my phone, less time doom scrolling, especially in 2025. So if you are wanting to spend less time scrolling on your phone and mindlessly shopping, I built you a free guide here called Break the Scroll. I will link that down below that you can check out and put some of those habits in place to take back our time, live more intentionally. I'm on a screen all day in my 9 to 5. And so when I'm not at work, I want to feel free. I want to be outside doing the things that I love. Like, really encourage you to just know that if you take the time, sit with yourself of like, what is your why? What are the systems you're putting into place? How are you going to track this budget? What is your budget going to be? Like, you got to put the system in place. And if you do, I know that you will be super successful and you'll feel really proud of yourself. It's pretty cool to hear so much about New Year's resolutions and how by February, like, no one's committed to them anymore. And so I feel really proud that, like, I set out for a goal for a full year and I had that one hiccup, but I like recommitted and I stayed committed for the full year. That's what I hope for you here in 2026. I'd love for you to subscribe and stick around so that you can have more support in being able to be successful on this journey of being a conscious consumer and living more intentionally. Let me know in the comments below if you are doing a low buy journey this year. I would love to hear about it. And I will link you this video next of the things that I wish I knew before I started my low buy journey. That would really help a bunch that I only know now after doing it for a full year. But if you want the Cliff Notes version, check out that video next, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.